Canto 25. Summary. The three poets continue up to the seventh terrace. As they walk, Dante asks Virgil how it is that the souls below are able to grow thin and gaunt when they don't actually have bodies. Virgil offers a brief response, but asks Statius to give a fuller answer. Statius seeks Virgil's pardon for speaking of those eternal things that are denied him. He then launches into a long treatise on the formation of the body and the soul in the womb, and what the soul does after the body dies. According to Statius, who expresses the medieval understanding of these matters, the power that forms the body originates in the heart of the father, travels through his seed, and works upon the receptive egg in the womb of the mother, referred to as perfected blood and another's blood in its natural cask, respectively. The one works on the other, forming a vegetative soul, the soul of natural growth that is shared with plants. Unlike plants, however, this new formation is still in process and soon develops a sensitive soul as well, the soul of sense perception that is shared with animals, like a sea sponge. The formative power in the blood of the father continues to work on the new body and develop each member. At this moment, God, the prime mover, comes to the womb and breathes a new spirit full of power. This is the intellectual soul, the soul of man, which draws into itself the vegetative and sensitive souls. This newly formed soul, now complete, is the form of the body, giving it its shape and meaning. In this hylomorphic union, man lives his life. When he dies, the soul continues on even though the body returns to dust. It then finds itself on the shore of either the Acheron or the Tiber, heading either to hell or to heaven. When it arrives, it begins to reflect the body it was the form of, like moisture in the air reflects the sun's light, creating a rainbow. This reflection of the soul is composed of reflected organs as well, though in reality it is all simply an emanation of the intellect. It is through this emanation that the soul is able to sense the world of the afterlife, either in pain, as in the Inferno, or in discipline, as here in Purgatorio, or in blessedness, as in Paradiso. Specifically with regard to the souls here in Purgatory, the afflictions Dante beholds on each of the terraces are forms taken by the desire of the soul who delights to purge himself or herself of the habit they struggled against. In this way, the souls are participating not just in the action of their discipline, but in the formation of it as well. The travelers come to the seventh terrace, where most of the ledge is consumed in a refining fire. There is a narrow ledge on which they walk. Dante hears souls within the flames singing the hymn for Saturday matins, Great God of Boundless Mercy. They alternate between singing the hymn and rehearsing stories of purity and chastity. In this way, Dante, the poet, says, the wound at last is healed. Canto 25. The Lustful. It was the hour the climb brooked no delay, for the sun was leaving the middle wheel for Taurus, and the night for Scorpio. Therefore, as the man who does not remain, but goes his way, whatever may appear, should the sting of necessity pierce him, so he entered along the narrow way, taking the stairs one after the other, for the narrowness unpairs the climbers. And as the baby stork raises its wing from a desire to fly, but does not try to leave the nest, and so lowers it down, such was I with desire now stoked, now spent, to inquire, assuming the attitude one takes when debating whether to speak. My sweet father did not stop, though the pace was rapid, but said, Loose the bow of speech you have drawn all the way to the iron. Assured, I opened my mouth and began, How can one achieve thinness in that place where the need of nourishment touches none? If you brought to mind how Meleager was consumed in a firebrand's consumption, he said, this would not be so sharp to you. And if you thought how your image darting within mirrors mirrors your own darting, that which seems hard would seem easy to you. But so that you may rest in your desire, behold here Statius, and I ask and plead that he will now be healer of your wounds. If I spread for him the eternal view, Statius said, in your presence, pardon me, for I am unable to deny you. Then he began, If your mind sees, my son, and receives my words, they will be to you a light concerning the how that you ask. Perfected blood, which is never consumed by parched veins, but instead is left behind like food that one removes from the table, takes on in the heart formative virtue for all the human members, as that blood travels through the veins to become those parts. Absorbed again, it drops to where silence is better than speech, and thence drips over another's blood in its natural cask. There one and the other dwell together, one prone to receive, the other to make by the perfect place from which it is pumped. And, arrived, it begins to operate, coagulating first, and then quickens what it made to be thick for its matter. The act of virtue, becoming a soul like that of a plant, yet different in that this is on the way, that has reached the shore, afterwards works such that it moves and feels like a sea sponge. Thence it begins to make for powers organs, of which they are the seeds. Now unfolds, now extends the virtue, son, that comes from the heart of the begetter, where nature understands all the members. But how from a beast it becomes a child, you still do not see. This is such a point that has made one wiser than you wander, so that by his doctrine he separates the possible intellect from the soul, not seeing an organ occupied by it. Open your breast to the truth now coming, and know that when the articulation of the enwombed child's brain is perfected, the prime mover himself approaches it, joyful in the artfulness of nature, and breathes a new spirit full of power, that draws what it finds active there into its own substance, and makes only one soul that lives and feels and considers itself. And that you may wonder less at my words, look at the heat of the sun that makes wine, joined to the liquid distilled from the vine. When Lycesis holds no more of that thread, loosed from the flesh, the soul carries with it, in its powers the human and divine. The other powers are all the more mute. Memory, understanding, and the will are sharper than before in its action. Without lingering, it falls by itself miraculously to one of the shores. There the soul first understands its pathways. As soon as that place circumscribes it there, the formative virtue radiates round in form and frame as in living members. And as the air, when it is thoroughly full of moisture, reflects another's rays, and becomes adorned with diverse colors, so the atmosphere surrounding the soul which is at rest takes to itself the form that the soul seals in it by its virtue. And after, in the same way that the flame follows the fire wherever it changes, the spirit is followed by its new form. Because the soul is thus made visible, it is called a shade, and thus makes organs for every sense, even including sight. In this way we speak, in this way we laugh, in this way we make the tears and the sighs that you have heard throughout the mountain. According as our desires and other affections afflict us, the shade takes form. This is the cause of what you wonder at. By then we had come to the final pain, and having turned round the right-hand side, we were attending to another care. There the mountain flashes forth flames of fire, and the cornice breathes out an upward draught that blocks the flame, and through it cuts a path. Thus we had to go on the open side, one by one. Here I was fearing the flames, while there I was fearing the downward fall. My leader was saying, "One needs to maintain along this edge a tight rein on the eyes, for it would not take much for one to err." "Sumae Deus clementiae," I heard sung then in the bosom of the great heat, which made me no less eager to turn round. And I saw spirits walking in the flame, therefore I was watching them and my steps dividing my vision from time to time. After the end of that hymn had been reached, they loudly cried, "Virum non conosco," and then they began the hymn again, softly. Coming to the end, they again cried out, "Diana kept the wood and expelled Hellas, who felt the sting of Venus." Then they turned once again to the singing. Then they named wives and husbands who were chaste as virtue and the marriage vows demand. And I believe this way suffices them throughout the time they are torched by the flame. It is necessary that with such cures and with such meals the wound at last is healed.